Now, we are delighted, listeners, to welcome a brand new sponsor to the EquiRatings Eventing Podcast in 2024. We have got a relaunch series. Horse of a Lifetime is here for you, and we are going to be delving a little bit deeper into some of those heroic horses that we know and love so well. And to get things started, we wanted to find out a little bit more about Agria Equine Insurance, because they have come on board with the Eventing Podcast. They have a brilliant message to share, and to get things started, I'm delighted to say Vicky Wentworth, Chief Executive of Agria UK, is with me. Vicky, first of all, Agria feels like it has come from pretty much nowhere. I mean, it has been, 18 months? And actually now we are so used to having you in the equestrian world. Are you a new company, or have I missed something?
Oh, that's a super good question. New doing equine in the UK, yes.
Okay.
But actually, Agria is actually the largest pet insurer in Europe. We're owned by a Swedish head office. And we've been around for over 130 years. And actually, the first animal we insured in 1890 was a horse. So actually, we have seriously been around for a long time insuring horses, just not so long in the UK.
Feels like it's come full circle. One of your flagship products, which I think is probably the hot topic of conversation in the equestrian world right now, because insurance is such an important part of any horse owner's journey. But your flagship product is lifetime insurance. Are you basically telling me that you can insure a horse for its entire lifetime, regardless of what injuries or ailments, and we all know they love injuries and ailments, it might have?
Yes, that's exactly what we're saying. So I joined the company at the back end of 2021. And when they came and asked me if I was sort of up for doing the job, I said yes. But you know what? As an equestrian, if you want me to launch equine insurance, I really genuinely need you to listen to what I have to say, because I've been on the wrong end, or the receiving end, of insurance that just hasn't met my expectations. And the company's been amazing from that viewpoint. So we do lifetime insurance. We're the only company in the UK that does lifetime. The reason being is, you're absolutely right. Yeah, horses go wrong, and they go wrong because of what we ask them to do, but they also go wrong because they can be a little bit silly and do things that we don't actually need or want them to be doing, particularly when they get turned out and stuff. So lifetime means that at the moment we insure from 30 days. We're going to be doing obviously extensions to the policies, but from 30 days you can insure a little wee baby horse, and you can take it right up until, it goes over the equestrian rainbow, so to speak. So the brilliant thing is, all of those ailments that come in the period of time that it's insured are covered. Never any exclusions.
Never any exclusions. It's like the magic words, honestly, listeners. Surely, though, that is only while I own that horse.
No, it's not actually. So what we are really keen to do is we want to uphold the whole welfare and health angle for the animal. And one of the things that, of course, happens is when horses change hands really frequently. In comparison, when we say our dog is not for Christmas, it's for life, we don't seem to feel that way about horses. And then we do sort of sit there and go, oh my goodness, they've got ulcers or they've got behavioural issues. And yet, we pass them around really frequently. But I think the point here is that if you really want to give owners peace of mind and you want the animal to have the best care possible, then it shouldn't just be at the point at which it's with one person. So we actually say that the policy moves with the horse. So if you insure from 30 days, for example, if you're a breeder or if you're somebody who buys a youngster and wants to be bringing it on, a few years after that or whatever, and it's insured with Agria, then actually that policy moves with a horse through the course of its life. And we're very proud that we don't have any age exclusions. We're also super, super proud that, it means that vets don't have to, in their own words, I've heard vets say this to me, throw the book at it, because it's not, you haven't got this 12-month sort of period where everything has to happen immediately. If your horse needs 6 months in the field, it can have 6 months in the field. If it needs some diagnostic care, but actually then needs a little bit of time and some rehab, then all of that can happen. And we all know that the natural mending process is so effective both in humans and in small pet and in horses. So, why on earth would we try and squeeze it all in? So, yeah, super, super excited to be heading up the lifetime sort of equine market.
Does it affect my premium? So say I have to make a claim, is that going to then affect my premium for the next year?
No, we absolutely don't put the premiums up because of claims. What happens is it's the same as human life insurance. Yeah, the risk gets greater as the animal gets older. So there are price increases at the point at which our evidential data tells us that the horses are more likely to, have ailments, for example. So the price curve moves with the data that we've got through the course of the animal's life. But I guarantee, we do not put prices up as a result of somebody claiming. It's all about the horse having a much, much better quality of life.
I love that, because actually everything I've found with Agria is that it's sort of run by horse people for horse people, and everybody seems to really understand actually what it's like to be in that situation and have kind of been there themselves, which makes a massive difference. Am I right in thinking that there's also a service that enables you to speak to, without it affecting your premiums, a vet that will give you guidance and advice on actually the next steps that you should be taking?
Yeah, so we were really lucky. Actually, last year we launched something called Agria Vet Guide, and it's a model that sort of exists in lesser forms in the UK currently. So there's many opportunities where you can phone a veterinary nurse with your insurance company and get some advice on the telephone, etc. We actually decided that we needed to go one step further. So we have the Agria Vet Guide app. Is you can book an appointment. You can book it literally within 10 minutes if there's availability, so it's really, really fast. It's immediate. And you can video call with a vet. So for me, this was really, really important, because it means that if there is something happening, you are very unsure of the next steps you might want to take. Sometimes it's minor, yeah, for sure, you can, but sometimes it might actually be more serious. So it's quite difficult. We don't all have a view of what our horse might be doing when it's colicking, for example. Or it might be lame. You might have got on it and thought, you know what, it doesn't feel quite right today, feels a bit footy, perhaps the gait isn't quite consistent. You can stick it on a lunge and you can you can have it on the video talking to a vet. So the vet is then very able at the end of the line to be able to substantiate whether they feel, given what they've seen, your animal needs to go to the vet straight away. So you absolutely need to make a call, or whether in fact, you could bide a little bit of time. You don't have to go for an emergency call out. You don't necessarily have to do it on a Sunday. You could do it on a Monday. So all of these things just allow customers to make, I suppose, more careful and considered decisions about how they then go forwards and treat their horse.
All about horse welfare, and actually speed and access. You make a very good point. Can you avoid that emergency vet call out fee? It is massively useful. Now, Horse of a Lifetime, this series on the podcast, I'm so excited about. We've been talking about it for a little while. It is finally here, listeners, and we have got an absolutely brilliant episode to get you started with. But can I ask you, why Horse of a Lifetime? Why have you decided to go with this?
My word, as an equestrian, we all have a horse of a lifetime, yeah? And I don't actually think you need to have owned your own horse of a lifetime. If you've ridden, there might have been the pony in the riding school that absolutely got your heart pounding, as a child. So this for me was about, if you love horses, then you understand that when somebody says to you, horse of a lifetime, you go, oh, yeah, I really get that. Yeah. So it was really about that. It was about the fact that it doesn't matter whether you're a professional rider and it's the first horse that's got you your first big track, or, whether it's as I say, the pony that's come into the family and taught multiple children to ride in the family, cousins and, nephews and friends and what have you. So, horses are just miraculous creatures, and they touch us so deeply when they're in our lives. And I think there's just that horse of a lifetime thing. It's that cut is so beautifully deep, but also beautifully emotional. So that's why horse of a lifetime.
It's really interesting. Throughout this series, listeners, we're going to be asking some of the most well-known riders in the world who their horse for lifetime is. And I feel like some of us might have a preconceived idea as to who that horse might be and what the answer might be. But actually, I think there might be a few surprises in there as well. Sustainability is such a massive topic of discussion at the moment. What does it mean to Agria?
So, I'm going to blow our trumpet. We're the UK's only carbon positive pet insurer, and I joined the business a couple of years ago, and I said to my team, there's things that are really important to us. We like to make a stand as an organisation for things that we feel offer a better quality of life, both to our owners and to the pets that we insure and they own. And sustainability is one of those, yeah. So every single event that we run is at least carbon neutral. So we offset all of our events. But, we've got some, brilliant initiatives. We support worldwide initiatives for, whether that's digging water wells in Africa to support them, the irrigation systems and actually keeping village tribes alive, or, whether it's forestation in the Amazon. So actually there's some of it is really, really big, global scale stuff. Some of it's quite small. Some of it is about planting trees using veterans, that are, traumatized by either the physical or mental effects of war. So they, they're volunteers, and we support a charity that does exactly that, plants trees. So we offset our events, not just by planting trees, but of course it's doing some good when we can sort of do that. We also give seeds away for the bees to a lot of our partners and customers. But actually, we've also got a super initiative, which I love. It's really, really innovative. And it's our hoof print and our paw print calculators. So you can offset, or at least go and find out what the carbon footprint is of your horse or your pet. So we do dogs, cats and rabbits as well. And you can offset that with us on our website, or you just, as a matter of interest, know that your horse equals X number of tons of carbon per annum. And it's all about where you seek your feed from, how much you travel around in the lorry. Do you, for example, use wood shavings or straw? What fodder do you feed it? All of these things, is it wrapped in plastic? Is it not wrapped in plastic? But all of these things come together to create a carbon hoof print of your horse. So, and I just think that's really special. Yeah, there's so many people who don't actually know, but are really keen to understand the impact that they're having on the environment. So, maybe you don't necessarily have the money to offset. It's not extraordinarily expensive, but I appreciate that every pound is a pound. It's about £14 to offset your horse. But you know what? Go and have a look. Go onto our website and have a look at your carbon hoof print. Or prints.
Carbon hoof print. I love that. That's really interesting. And actually, we're all looking to do what we can. I think any little thing that we can do better, even if it's just learning about it and we don't actually financially contribute, is really, really important. You mentioned there other pets as well. So you can actually help me not just with my horse, but my dog, my cat and my rabbit.
Yeah, that's right. So we're very keen to remain specialist. So we really only do small pet, which is dog, cat, rabbit and equine. And it's just really important to us. Yeah. Our claims team are veterinary trained, so they will be able to have a very knowledgeable conversation with you about most of the ailments that they see every day. Similarly, we are full of people who love pets, and it's quite important that if you ring up as a customer, even to the customer service team or to the sales team or into the claims team, that you're actually talking to people who have some empathy with what you're trying to impart, or actually what you're going through. So yeah, small pet and horses, but super proud to be specialist and don't really want to spread ourselves any more thinly.
It sounds like what you're doing actually is working, so makes perfect sense. Now I have to ask, she is the star of the first episode of the Horse for Lifetime series, brought to you by Agria, listeners. Ros Canter. She is an Agria sponsored rider. Why Ros? I mean, that feels like an obvious question because she's brilliant, but it's obviously very important to you about the people that are part of your team. So how does Ros fit into it for you?
So it's really interesting. We obviously had quite a lot of choice. Yeah, there's a fair few riders across the equestrian fraternity, but I've talked about us being specialist. I've talked about the fact that my teams are people who really love and care about animals, and they really love and care about the outcome, and they care about the business, so much so that they voted us one of the best places to work in 2024. So, really passionate team for what we do and what we stand for. So it's so important for me when we were choosing these sponsored riders that we were going to be aligning ourselves with people with whom we had quite a lot in common, if that makes sense. So people who were quite ethical, had a lot of integrity. Ros is obviously not just a brilliant rider, but actually she's loved, in the equestrian fraternity deeply by, people who ride against her, people who aspire to be like her, about people in the home who just watch her on television. So I think she's just somebody who embodies so much of what I really feel our business is about. She's a big family person. She's just got, as I say, oodles of integrity. She's a damn nice person if you speak to her. Certainly not in any way too big for her boots. And I just think she's just extraordinary. Yeah, she's enormously talented, has every reason to feel quite proud of herself. But actually, she's the most self-deprecating person you could possibly ever meet. So, uber talented and a lovely person. What's not to like?
Yeah, absolutely. And she, on this show, I have to admit, listeners, there's been a choice. Who could Ros Canter's horse of a lifetime be? We are about to find out. Thank you so much, Vicky. It has been a pleasure. We are delighted to have Agria on board the journey for this year. And we're looking forward to delving a little bit further into some of those stories of horses of a lifetime.
Oh, thank you for having me. Thank you.
Listeners, if you want to find out more, if you want to find out your carbon hoof print or paw print, or you want to team about your own insurance needs, agriapet.co.uk, go and pay them a visit and see just what they might be able to do for you. We are delighted to have them on board. And now let's crack on with the show. There is no other way that we could start the Horse of a Lifetime series with anybody but the Agria sponsored rider herself, Ros Canter, badminton champion, PO champion, former world champion, reigning European champion. The list goes on. Ros, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me on again. Yeah, we're wintering very well.
It's always a pleasure. Now, this I feel like is a tough question because you are very much in the thick of your career, and I am sure that there are plenty of challenges, might talk about a few of them a little bit later on in the show, listeners, that could take this title. But as of now, who has been your horse for lifetime?
Oh, I think that's got to be the legend that was Allstar B. He really just kick-started and accelerated my career in a way that I never imagined. So, yeah, I'm forever grateful for him.
Dear old Albie. So take us back to your first meeting with him. Was it love at first sight?
No, I would say not. No. So he was delivered to my yard in a van.
A van? Did he fit in a van?
Well, yeah, he did fit in a van, in a little two-horse. He'd come from Scotland. And my first impression was, he's really big. He was just really big. And I thought, oh no, he's so big.
How big was he?
I don't really know, but he was over 17 hands, definitely. But he was just quite an imposing horse as well, I suppose. I mean, in those days, he was quite weak in terms of, he wasn't really furnished. He was quite an angular horse as a young horse, but he was still quite a solid looking horse, I'd say.
How old was he at this point?
He was 8 when I took him on.
Okay, so he'd be a little bit older. And had he done much or?
Yes, he'd done. So Caroline Moore started him off. So she bought him from Via. She did the first few events on him, took him round, I think 2 or 3 novices, but he wasn't particularly keen on water as a young horse. So he had a few cross-country faults at water. And so Caroline had just literally got the job doing the youth team stuff for British Eventing, and felt that it was her only horse and she shouldn't really be riding him and not going well cross-country in front of people that she was teaching and things like that. So Emily Parker took the ride on. So Emily Parker was originally quite local to me and was very much under Caroline's wing at the time. And And so she took him around a few novices and things, and she was on the world class program. And through world class, I think she was kind of taken to Scotland for some training with Ian Stark and just loved it and never left. So Albie went up to Scotland for a bit with Emily, and then Caroline just wasn't really able to see him at all. Or, Caroline wanted to be involved in him. It's, who she is as a person. So that's when he came back down to me.
And in terms of the water problem, did he grow out of that completely? I always remember Andrew Nicholson talking about Nereo with ditches, I think. And he said he always still, even going down to the vicarage ditch the year of badminton that he won, he still gave him an extra squeeze. Did the water totally leave? Did he leave that behind, or did it stick with him?
No, he did leave it behind. Yeah, he definitely left it behind, but I don't think we ever took it for granted. And certainly in his early years, even when he went round his first 5 stars, we've got a little cross country course at home, and I would water school him the day before an event for many years. Not so much towards the end, but it was always in the back of my mind. And I was lucky because he was always such a careful jumper that I could at the start, particularly at the start, I came in quite pacey, quite fast to water with him, and then gradually that got better. But I could always ride in if I needed to, and I wouldn't have taken it for granted with him. But he never ever stopped at water with me, and he hadn't done kind of for the 6 months prior to me having him either. So it was something he was coming out of anyway.
At this point, you hadn't yet ridden at the 5-star level. But did he give you the feeling quite early on that actually he would be a horse that would take you all the way and that he would go all the way?
Well, I think the big thing at that point, in my career was that I had a huge amount of self-doubt. I didn't have a good system when it came to cross-country riding and things like that. And I think the 5-star felt like a long way off. And certainly even when I went and did my 5 stars, I felt fairly out of my depth for a couple of years. So, yes, I mean, straight away, he was clearly scopy and extremely careful. And that at least gave me quite a lot of confidence because he wasn't a horse that was going to rattle over a fence. If anything, he went a bit too high and wasted time. And Caroline always knew, Caroline was always very much, we crack on, we get on with this, because this horse could go around a big event. I don't think we probably ever quite realised how good he could become on the flat. That was his big challenge as a young horse. Was there a turning point with that? I think just as he got older and stronger and was able to carry himself more. But he was, as a young horse, when I got him at 8, I think we went to Osberton for the 3-star. I think in old numbers terms, I think I got a 57 dressage, which was very, very middle of the road. He just had no energy and engine when he was in a 20 by 60 arena. The moment he had to turn corners, he lost all momentum and all desire to go forwards as well. And I remember we just walked in the shoulder in. Right to the very end, he was pretty lazy in the dressage. You put a jump saddle on or a dressage saddle on, he had 2 very different personalities.
You mentioned there your sort of strategy to cross-country riding, which is something that you've very much developed now. And I would say you're very open in talking about publicly. How instrumental was he at that stage in your career at actually developing your sort of cross-country strategy?
Yeah, well, I think it was, make or break, really. And I think probably he highlighted my lack of kind of the system and things like that more than any other horse because, truthfully, he was too big for me. And he was also, the more he went up the levels, he was in a way quite an insecure horse and quite reactive to noise and atmosphere and adrenaline. So the more he went round big events, the harder he became to handle at the start of the cross-country course. And if we didn't quite get that right, he became very strong when he was out on the course. So, it was not only was my system not good enough, but I needed new tools to be able to handle a horse like him.
You mentioned there that actually, he was a big horse. You're very petite. You're 5'2", I want to say.
2 at a push, yeah.
2 at a push, 2 on your tippy toes.
Yeah.
And he's sort of over 17 hands. He's also, coming to you when he's 8, he's a horse that's been produced by other people. So actually, he's not one that's been in your system as such from a very, very young age. How did you train him to work with you, and how did you adapt your riding actually then to suit him in terms of just general partnership?
Yeah, so I think that the really key thing that with Albie is that he came at a time in my career where pretty much, certainly for the first few years, I was pretty much the only person that rode him. Because at that point I didn't really have staff, or certainly staff that were riding and things like that. So, all the gallop work, everything was done by me, which I think, probably actually really, really helped. Nowadays, the people I've got surrounding me have been with me for years anyway, so it would have been fine. But at that point I didn't. And I was very careful, everything was planned with Albie. And if I went up the gallop again, I was always in the back of my mind thinking, actually, is he having fun? Is he just running? Is he getting to the point where I couldn't get him back? So I never just kind of blasted up the gallops with him. There was always a point where I'd go, right, we're halfway, we're hitting a bit of speed, but actually I'm not sure I'm in control of this speed. So we're going to take it back. We're going to do some transitions. We're going to go and do a bit of flat work up on the hill, and take it back slowly again, to then build up again. So it was always, there's a lot of thought that went into that. And I just never really wanted him to know how small I was and how big and strong he was. So I tried to do my best to always, get on top of that before it got away from me.
It's like good parenting, isn't it? You sort of just have to bring them round to your way of thinking and not let them know that actually they could be in charge.
Yeah, he was so genuine. It was never intentional on his part. He just, on top of the fact that he was big, he didn't particularly have the softest of mouths, and he was quite a stiff horse to ride. Flexion and half passes and shoulder ins and things. They weren't the bit that he found easy. He liked going in straight lines. So you get him on a gallop in a straight line, and he could quite easily forget that I was there. So it was just always about managing that and trying to, think little things like we always changed his bit regularly. He never went up the gallops in a bit for 2 years. We just popped different ones in all the time just to try and keep playing the game really a little bit.
Is that something that's been very unique to him in terms of how you manage that? Or is that something you would do with a lot of your other horses now?
No, I do it with them all, and I hope that I've, educated my staff to do the same, that we are always evaluating and talking about the horses and things like that, and we switch bits out and things. But he was definitely the starting point of that. And I probably haven't had another that I've had to be quite so careful, like nowadays, because I've got more than one horse at 4 and 5 star level. We do gallop horses together and things like that, where I think I would have struggled to do that all the time with Albie and being able to stick with the control. Whereas, Lordship's Gruffalo, he's pretty chill about stuff. He's more likely to buck and mess about, but it's done to get strong to the point where I was struggling to hold him. So it's just very different. Whereas Albie never really played. He wasn't a playful type. He was just big. He was just big and powerful and a little bit strong in the mouth.
What was he like as a person?
He was a funny character. He was, in a lot of ways at home, he was quite insecure. He didn't cope that well if he really loved routine. He liked to be fed first and things like that. He liked to go out in the field early, but he didn't like to be out in the field when there weren't any other horses out. And the moment another horse started to come in when we're in the winter routine, when they just go out in the mornings at the moment, the moment one horse came in, Albie was at the gate and needed to come in too. So he was very, very into humans, desperate for attention. quite a big fear of missing out on being left and things like that. So he was quite a clingy horse. I had Zenshira running at a similar time, and Zenshira was also a clingy horse, so a bit of a nightmare together. They rarely ran at the same event because they wouldn't have stood in the lorry by themselves, and they screamed at each other. So he looked kind of always big and laid back, but he definitely had, quite an insecure streak. And for a little bit in his career, for about, I think, a season and a half, he just got a little bit cheeky on the lorry, and he used to walk on the lorry, turn around, and then run off again and gallop off for a bit. And little things like that, he just out of the blue, he just did sometimes have a slight flight instinct when you weren't quite expecting it. And he did it after his first Burley, and he'd just gone around Burley, he'd gone around his first 5-star, and all the way around, he just show jumped, or he put him on the lorry to take him home, and he ran off, and he ran around the lorry park at Burley for about 10 minutes when he was supposed to be tired. So he had a bit of a funny streak, and, when he travelled abroad and stuff, we'd be careful with him if he was loading on the plane or something like that his buddy was always close behind him or with him, because he just did get quite attached to things quite quickly. But then in other ways, he didn't buck, he didn't rear. He was lovely. He was lovely like that. He was lazy as could be at home in the arena, and then out hacking as he got older. He got more tricky. I think he just got a bit noise sensitive and things like that. So if he trod on a twig or something and it cracked, he would get a bit funny, and he had this kind of funny half jog step on the way home where he wanted to get home. So he kind of had a funny, insecure, slightly nappy streak, but he never wasn't like a planty nap. It was just that needing to be reassured quite a lot.
Just to keep you on your toes. Was he cuddly?
Yes, he was an affectionate horse. Yes. Yeah, and loved, like really more than any of the other horses I had, really enjoyed having one-on-one at a 3-day, and had somebody that was his person. He liked that a lot. He loved when Sarah went with him everywhere, and he really knew Sarah and liked Sarah and whinnied at her and things like that when we were away at events. So yeah, he was definitely somebody that needed people around him.
Favourite treat?
Oh, I think he ate any treat. Yeah,
and it wasn't fussy.
I don't remember him being particularly fussy. No.
Let's go back to some of his career highlights. Is there one outside of Tryon and the World Championships? Because we'll come on to that separately. Is there one outside of Tryon that really stands out for you with him?
Yeah, so Badminton 2017. So that was kind of my turning point in my career. So I'd done 2 Burleys when I'd been slow, out of control, all those things that I've talked about before. Went to Chris Bartle over the winter, made some changes, practiced my system, went to Badminton in the spring. So I'd gone to the advanced at Weston Park and practiced the system, and without even feeling like I was going fast, I'd come home with 2 time faults. And I just said to Caroline, God, it's amazing. And he felt in great balance as well, and he felt light and responsive. And then I went to Badminton afterwards, and I think it still is now probably the best, aside from some of the rounds I've had on Walter, the best cross country experience in my life. It just I think I was so new to the system. I believed wholly in it, and I put all my faith in it. And Albie was just in his prime. I think, as he got a little bit older, he became slightly harder, almost like the power steering and everything wasn't quite so on point. But on that day, in that year, he obviously felt amazing, and the system worked, and it just was, I think, a moment that even now I've got the video and I would look back and be very proud of it.
Has your system changed much from that kind of initial system that you created with him?
No, it hasn't. No, it hasn't. But it's evolved slightly because he was very strong and he was very slow. He wasn't the easiest horse to go from a gallop to the canter you might need for a turning exercise or something like that. always took a little bit longer. And I've, with the Walters and things like that, I've been able to kind of just drum it down a little bit. I had to be very clear with it before, whereas now I can be a little bit more subtle, so that the system stays the same. It's just now believing that, I don't have to do it in such a clear way. And that's taken a little bit of getting used to, because in some ways I thought, oh goodness, I'm not sticking to that system. I should be. I am. I'm just a lot more subtle about it, which enables me to be faster.
That badminton feels like it was a real breakthrough moment. Not only had everything you'd been working on with Chris and the team kind of come together, but for you and Albie, then you got your first senior championship call up to Stragom to the Europeans later that year. I remember watching your cross-country round, and on paper it should not have been a track that would have suited him, because it was twisty, it was turny, it was tight, it was a real racetrack, wasn't it? It was sort of kind of flat, and there weren't many straight lines from memory. How did that then compare, and what was that round like? Because he went on for a top 5 finish there, and that looked to be a really extraordinary moment that actually kind of set you up then for the World Championships the following year.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably that was the hardest track I ever rode on him. The angles, I don't think I've jumped an angle again that was like, I think it was fence 4 or 5 at the beginning. And the angle was really severe. And I remember we'd been down to watch Oliver. He was first to go for the team. I was second to go for the team. I'd been down to watch Oliver go through, and he'd run out there, and I'd watched 4 or 5 others, and literally no one had jumped it. And I kind of went back to the stables and hung around for a bit, and I thought somebody was going to come and tell me what to do, because it was my first time in that team environment. So I was waiting and waiting. I thought, why hasn't anyone come and told me what to do yet? Like, surely they're going to say, well, maybe you should go the long route, because that's what everyone's doing now. And so I got on my phone, I rang Chris and Bartle, and I said, so what do you want me to do? And he said, stick to the system. Stick to the system. Eyes on the end of the line. Make it happen. Off you go. And I thought, oh gosh, I better get on with it then. And and he was amazing. And I have to say, I mean, he was pretty strong that day. It was not his track. You go all the way up one way and basically turn around and gallop all the way back the other with some twists in between. So it wasn't really his track at all, but he was amazing, because I did have to, I mean, I look back, I don't think it was my prettiest round in terms of, I looked like I was having a bit of a tug of war sometimes, which quite frankly I was with him. But yeah, I mean, he was straight as a die by that point. He was on it.
Sometimes it's one of those things, cross-country riding, you don't get marks for being pretty. It's about making it happen. And I remember that day, it just felt like such a round of guts and determination, and actually kind of a sign of what was to come, because then the following year, back to badminton, almost the one that got away, that badminton, because he finished 3rd, but as a very, very reliable show jumper, he had an uncharacteristic rail, which just kept him in 3rd on the podium. But he, I guess, cemented himself at this point as very much, on the team list for Tryon. So talk us through that World Championships. There felt like there was so much, I don't want to call it angst, but actually there was a lot of angst in the build up to that championship as to whether it was going to be ready in time. And then when you got out there, the conditions, and then the big hill was a point of much discussion. There was a storm coming in. There were all these things being talked about. What was it actually like going out there with him?
I don't really remember all that hype that much about the weather and the stuff like that. And I think that's where, Richard Waygood and the team around us are very good, because, we're very good at staying focused on what we can control. So from that point of view, it was absolutely fine. I actually really enjoy not traveling with the horses. I quite liked, and it doesn't happen a lot because often I'm driving a lorry and things, but I do quite like, and actually it's not something I'm so bothered about now, but then I used to get quite bothered about, like if we were driving a lorry a long distance, we got stuck in traffic and things like that, and I'd be like, gosh, the poor horses and things. Whereas I quite liked, that was almost the first time where Albie just left.
Out of your control.
Out of my control, out of my sight. I didn't really know what was happening. I got there and, I hadn't seen how long the journey was and things like that. So I was able just to say, right, it's time to crack on. And actually, his journey wasn't without mishaps. He actually got a bit of tummy ache when he got to America. So he wasn't all that well for a couple of days. And there were times when it was a little bit touch and go whether, it was actually going to happen. So, but just the fact of that happening when I was still here, and so I was completely detached from it. And I just said, you guys, you're with him, you deal with him. I'll look after stuff that's going on at home. And then when I got out there, I was able just to go, well, I didn't see any of that, so we'll just crack on.
His first phase in Tryon, having kind of got over that bumpy start and it all of a sudden being all systems go, his first phase in Tryon, he scored 24.6, which is a pretty magic score, to be honest. He'd gone slightly lower, that badminton in the spring, I think 23.9 he'd got that year. So you knew he was on track with those kinds of numbers. What was your reaction to that test, in that environment, at that venue, on that stage?
Oh, I remember being extremely excited, very relieved as well. I mean, Albie, I had to work quite hard on the flat with Albie. I was often sweating just at home. So when you put the humidity we had that day in Tryon, I remember like about 5 minutes before we going in saying to Caroline, I don't know if I can hold this up for much longer. Like, I don't know if my tummy's going to cope with this for much longer. And everyone just said, we jolly well get on with it. Like, stick your chest out, put a smile on your face, and off you go. And I was pouring with sweat. Absolutely pouring with it. And bless him. I mean, I'd given him a day off the day before. I think, I remember, because I'd ended up riding him twice. He had a late dressage on the Friday. I'd ended up riding him twice on the Wednesday, which I hadn't planned to do because we didn't realise that in the arena familiarisation we would be allowed to actually work in the arena. So I'd worked him in the morning in preparation just for wandering around in the afternoon, and I ended up giving him a bit more work. And I remember getting on him on the Thursday, picking him up, literally moving the bit, and thought, God, he feels really good, he feels ready. And Caroline said, well, let's put him away then. And so I literally did not do a step of trot on Thursday. I walked him around, got off, and then on the Friday morning I did 10 minutes, and then he did them again in the afternoon. So that was quite good, because that was like a real bit of like, actually, we know what we're doing. Let's trust our gut. Let's go with this.
I was going to say that feels brave, because there's always that temptation, isn't there, to just do a little bit. And actually, it's really something to say, nope, we're there. I trust that this is going to stay there for tomorrow. This is the right thing to do.
Yeah, and he definitely, he just wasn't a horse that was going to explode in the dressage. He wasn't that just wasn't him at all. If anything, it was the opposite. It was about, keeping him inspired, keeping him off the leg, and all of that. So, I think it was the right thing to do, because I knew I wanted to do a little bit on the Friday morning, and it just would have been overkill for him. And it was hot, and he was a big horse. He didn't need to kind of feel demoralised by the heat.
Talk us through that cross-country round.
So all I remember was how much of a long day it was. It was the first time I'd gone really late, and obviously because I was last to go for the team. So it was a long old wait, but Gemma Tassel had gone out first, and she was fantastic, and she was great at kind of telling me to get on with it, and it's absolutely fine. And then there was about a 25-minute walk to the cross-country start. So you'd get on at the stables and hack for 25 minutes. And there was like halfway along the hack to the cross-country course, there was a stop point where there was some cross-country jumps. And then you kind of carried on. And then there was more cross-country jumps at the start. But Albie was a notoriously difficult starter. So certainly by that point in his career, he wasn't doing any practice fences. he didn't warm up at all by that point. Yeah, he just the adrenaline got to him too much, and he got a bit nappy and things like that. So he would have a jump early in the morning at a big one, say kind of 7 a.m. before the crowds came in. And then I would literally say at badminton, I think we timed it at 8 minutes. I was on at the stables, trotted straight down to start, straight into the start box. He just couldn't cope with the warm up. So Tryon was tricky because getting a 25-minute walk right without getting there too early and without getting there too late required quite a lot of people manning me to make sure. And then the weather was a bit drizzly, so I'd stuffed kind of gloves down my breeches to make sure that if my gloves got wet, I had some spare pairs, because 25 minutes is quite a long time of getting wet. And once I was on him and he knew he was going cross country, nobody would be able to go near him. He didn't like that at all, because when he first got a bit tricky at the start, Caroline held him once for me, and then he got wind of that. So things like that. So we had like Greg, the farrier, he was with me in a quad bike coming with me. So he was then had a radio to the start, and they could say, like, slow down, speed up, because then there was a hole. So like, you have to really slow down. So I was kind of zigzagging along the track because I couldn't risk getting there too early. So that was quite stressful. Stressful to the point where I almost forgot about how nervous I was for the cross country.
Great distraction.
Get a bit wrong.
Slightly not ideal.
Not ideal. And then the really big thing I remember is that there was a really long gallop to the first fence. Like, the first fence was something like 20 seconds into the course. It was a long way. It was a really long way to the first fence. And do you know what? It was great for me, because normally I'd potter to the first fence, jump, build up to the second jump, get to my first minute and think, God, I've lost loads of time now. But I knew I couldn't do that because it was so far away. So I went. I went and I got a bit of a flyer over the first, and it just set the tone, really. I just kept chugging away the whole time, and he was great.
Coming home, knowing that you are clear inside the time, I think you moved up to individual silver at this point going into the jumping. The team are in pole position as well. What's the feeling as you come through the finish flags at that point?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's quite exciting, particularly, because I was the last of our kind of rotation of riders. So all the other riders by that point were there watching and supporting. So it was a great atmosphere coming through the finish. And I have to say, so out of all the championships I've been to so far, the team spirit and the way we all got on as a team was the best I've ever had. So it was just a fantastic experience anyway. And everyone said, oh, looking back, what was it like being in, individual silver so close to the gold medal? And it's weird because I honestly didn't even clock it. I mean, I knew I was in second, but we never spoke about it. It was all about the team and all about, we just got on really well like that. And I've got some really good photos of when Ingrid had the pole down, because I wasn't even watching. I was in the back because Albie was quite het up, so I was helping Sarah try and manage him a bit. And I just completely shocked, absolutely shocked by it, because it just hadn't even been on my radar that I was just relieved I hadn't had too many poles down, so that the team won, because it was close enough for the team. So yeah, completely shocked really that happened.
What was it like having the day off before the jumping? Because that feels quite unprecedented. They did a trot up on that sort of final, in inverted commas, final day that wasn't the final day. And then because of the storm, they delayed the jumping for a day. Did he mind that? What did he make of it?
No, he didn't mind it. And it probably, for him, it didn't matter at all. The odd one felt the horses went a bit spooky and fresh. But Albie's not really a fresh horse. He was tricky at the start of the cross country and things, but he was only tricky in certain situations. So from that point of view, no, he was fine. I don't remember doing, again, I think I gave him a bit of a trot and a canter round. I don't really remember jumping him a lot or do anything like that overly special. I think it was just more of a get him stretched and make sure he was feeling well and let him rest, really.
Looking back now at kind of knowing where he took you and actually, I guess, the springboard that he's given and helped to give your career. Just how influential has he been in the success of Ros Canter?
Oh, massive. Absolutely massive. I think he came along at exactly the right time for me. To be quite honest, probably if I got him now, I wouldn't be as enthusiastic. If he arrived on my yard as he did, as an 8-year-old, as a weak 8-year-old with, quite a tricky mouth and things like that, then, I'd almost think, is this the right horse for me? But I wasn't in that position at all. I was just grateful for a horse that was going to go around an intermediate that year. And any horse was a good horse at that point in my career. So, I think it just worked from that point of view. And he was scopy and careful, and that's what I needed at that time in my career. My cross-country riding, I was a bit nervous. I wasn't very confident. The dressage bit I could do and he couldn't. So from all those things, we were able to help each other. And, the hills that we've got at home, he got stronger and stronger. So I think there were so many things that helped us along the way. And, like Caroline as well, I think, we would both say he's changed our careers and our lives massively, and he's brought us both together. And, now we're a great team with all of my horses. So, yeah, no, I mean, I've got a lot to thank him for, really.
Can you sum him up in 3 words? How would you describe him?
I think kind, loyal, and intelligent.
They're 3 pretty powerful words, to be fair. We've talked a lot about the partnership that you had with him, and it's obviously something that Agria are so passionate about, protecting your partnership. At the end of the day, these incredible animals do so much for us, and it all comes down to the partnership and your best friends at the end of it. How do you create that bond, and what would be your biggest piece of advice for anybody that has a horse at home that they absolutely adore in terms of fostering and building on that partnership?
Well, I think having had my daughter, particularly, horses are essentially children in the way they think and behave and things like that. So I think one thing, it's all about being clear, setting boundaries and rewarding good behaviour, and I think that's a massive, massive thing. You've got to be, I've been up in Scotland doing some demonstrations, and I've actually ridden horses that were already up there. So I just got on strange horses at demonstrations. And that's what I talked about a lot, is that, in order for me to ride like I need to cross country, my horses have got to be well trained. And it's just setting clear boundaries. And so if it's not right, it's repeated. If it is right, it's praised. And that's whether you're dealing with them on the floor or when you're riding or you're hacking or anything else. And then on top of that is interpreting each horse's individual personality. So if something, if a horse needs educating or you need to repeat something because it wasn't good enough, what pressure tolerance does that horse have? You've got human beings, you've got children. Let's say you've got children who you could raise your voice at or be quite firm with, and it wouldn't bother them. And you've got other children that the moment you did that, they burst into tears and get emotional about it. And that's exactly the same as horses. They all have a pressure dial, and it's understanding which horse has that, what personality your horse has, and then creating a system where they know what, right and wrong is very clear. I'm not saying wrong in terms of naughty, wrong in terms of do they understand the job at hand or not.
Praise, when you're saying reward good behaviour, what would be your method? Is that simply taking the pressure off on a pat? Is it a treat? Or is that subjective to the horse?
We don't really do treats in our yard particularly, but no, just pats. And yeah, I use my voice a lot when I'm riding, good boy, good girl, a pat, a rest, a stretch. there's so many different ways of doing it, but they've got to understand that and understand that that's what it means, that they've achieved something that we were trying to achieve. The goal has been achieved. And again, I talked about this lot at the weekend, that, a horse might need to repeat something 3 days in a row. And it might take 40 minutes the first day. It might take 30 minutes the second day. They might come out on the third day and do it in 5 minutes. And if that's the case, I would give my horse a big pat and take it in. I don't have to be riding 45 minutes every day to feel like I've achieved something. And on that day, it would be tempting to go, right, they've ticked that box, so let's move on to the next and let's train them in something else. But out of experience, actually, they just a reward, a big pat and say, that was great, well done, and go in. That boosts morale, just like with children or human beings. You don't then say, well done, you've got that right, now I'm going to teach you something even harder. That's for the next week or the next month. So it's just building slowly, but repeating and being very clear, I think.
Exactly the same on the ground and in the stable yard. It's just all about appreciating each horse's individual personality. So if you've got a horse who is really cuddly, is a fussy horse, he's more central in our yard, he's nearer where the cross ties are, where we saddle up. And then you might have another horse who would just rather a quieter area, isn't particularly affectionate, and then we've got like a brickyard which is much quieter, so they're seen much less in a day. So I think all the time, like if a horse wants attention, wants fuss, I love to give them fuss, but equally there's no point me wanting to cuddle my horses all the time if it's not actually who they are as a person.
I think there are some good parenting advice there, listeners. Good advice.
I'm not quite sure I'm as good at it as my child. He doesn't seem to follow the rule book quite as well as the horses do.
Well, I don't know. It's all practice. It's all practice. Hey, listeners, if you can nail it with the horses, the kids are next in line. It's a good way of explaining it, though, because it's very, very true, and it's about finding out what works for them, finding out what makes them tick. And then I love the analogy of the pressure dial, because actually it's so tempting, isn't it? If something all of a sudden clicks, to be like, right, great, on to the next thing, or I'm going to keep doing that. But in reality, taking the pressure off, that reward is what they want. And ultimately that's highly successful.
And just quickly, horses don't forget, it's like riding a bike. Once they've nailed a skill, they've got that skill. So we don't have to then, panic that we need to drill it in every day of the week. Once they've got it, they've got it. They're good like that.
Okay, let's talk for a second about Agria, because we are so excited about this series, and it's been the most perfect way to kickstart the Horse for Lifetime series in 2024 with Allstar B and kind of reflecting on some of his and your great achievements. But tell us a little bit about what inspired your partnership with Agria.
Yeah, so Agria, I get to know the guys there more and more all the time, and I think like they're incredibly generous, an incredibly generous company, and they just really have horses and owners right at the forefront of their importance levels. And we were lucky enough to have a lunch with them. They brought my whole team down to to the London International Horse Show this year, and we had lunch with them, and it just absolutely shone that they're just all horse mad people as well, and they're completely in it for the right reasons, and that's where I think their lifetime insurance policy. So it doesn't matter what age your horse is, it doesn't matter what previous injuries the horse has had, your horse will always be covered. If your horse has had colic and gets colic again, you will still be covered under insurance. And every single person that I've met that works with Agria, that is just, it's their thing. That's what they do. They are all actually in it for all the right reasons.
It's enormously powerful because, and we've spoken about this at the top of the show, listeners. You'll have heard from Vicky and a little bit more about kind of the ethos around the lifetime insurance policy and everything else. But it's that peace of mind, isn't it? It's that knowledge that actually you're covered, because these horses, we've been talking about partnership and actually just how deep that runs, and you want to be able to do your best by them all of the time. And this helps you do that. So it's an incredibly important message.
Absolutely. I mean, and unfortunately and very sadly, Allstar B isn't with us now, but I still have one of my other horses of a lifetime, Zentura. He's just turned 20, and he's just still the centerpiece of our yard and always will be. He's not going anywhere. We absolutely adore him, and so to be able to have that confidence that, because he's our horse, he's not a horse I'm getting an income from. He's kind of in a stable which probably I could have another horse in, but to have that confidence that we can keep him into his old age and give him the life that he deserves is great.
That leads us on quite nicely to talk about a few of your other potential horses of a lifetime. And Alfie's and Shearer, certainly, plenty of our listeners will be familiar. He was very much at kind of the peak of Allstar B's career as well. He is now 20, as you say. Am I right in saying that he is now, he's not long in the tooth because he has no teeth, and that actually it's given him a new lease of life?
Yeah, he's absolutely hilarious now because he's got no front teeth because he had a tooth disease problem, and so they took out he went in to have some teeth out, and I just thought he'd kind of have one or two out, and he came back with no teeth, front, top or bottom, all the way along the front. And Alfie being Alfie's kind of quite laid back. If he was a human being, he'd be like the teenager with the jeans falling around his bottom, and his room would be messy, things like that. Very endearing, but just would be a bit slobbish maybe. And now his tongue just hangs out all the time. I mean, it gets worse and worse. But he was out hacking today, and quite funnily enough, Georgie, who works for me, was riding him today out hacking. We had a little canter, and Alfie went at the back, which I thought was quite brave when Georgie said she was going at the back, but he very nearly bucked her off, which was highly amusing. But he canters along out hacking with his tongue flapping. So yeah, he's very, very funny, but very well, which is lovely.
Is he still in charge of chaperoning the babies? Or is he too cheap for that now?
He's not behaving well enough to do anything like that. His job was supposed to be chaperoning babies and doing ride and lead with the children out hacking. He can't do anything.
Can't do it. Couple of the others, and these are the kind of the young pretenders. If we were to talk in 5-6 years' time and have this conversation again, who knows what these guys will have done. I'm going to start with Lordship Scraffalo, badminton champion, a horse who's been fourth at World Championships. He has been second at badminton as well, plus European champion by a country mile in very, very impressive form last summer. And kind of it feels like there are hugely exciting things for him in the future. How does he fit in to this horse of a lifetime puzzle for you at this stage?
Yeah, I think he's well on the way already, isn't he? He's, I love every inch of Walter, I really do. Allstar B, I just have huge respect for, because now particularly I've got a horse like Walter and some of the others, I realise how much he put into being as good as he could be. He did the work, he did the revision, and he came out with the grades. Walter's life is a little bit easier. It comes to him a bit easier in that respect. So the riding at home and things like that, from my point of view, is slightly more enjoyable, because Albie was a bit heavy to ride. He didn't particularly enjoy the schooling work at home. I often felt I had to be a little bit on his case all the time, whereas Walter could have, he does need keeping on top of a little bit, but essentially finds it easier to train on a daily basis, I'd say. I mean, he's a quirky character as Walter, but he's mellowed as he's got older. But he's an easier horse to ride, I suppose, on my body as well. I don't have to put quite so much into it. And he's just highly entertaining on a daily basis.
You were saying at the start of when we started chatting for this recording, and I was kind of going, yeah, how is he? How's life at home? And you were saying that actually he had his first jump of the year the same time as London 52, who would be quite well known for his exploits, but Walter didn't quite go at it with the same sort of zest. Is that fair to say?
No, fairly laid back, pretty chill. I mean, I don't think he knocked anything down. We probably just popped a few about a metre, but he probably did a metre and 0.0 of a centimetre. Flopped over, didn't think it was really worth getting out of bed for. So I thought it's a shame we didn't video, really, because it would have been quite funny to put the two side by side. Walter's definitely would look more disappointing, but he has since had one buck when he jumped. And I mean, in his own way, he loves it, but he's not outwardly kind of, raving about it, I guess.
He knows what he's got to do, and he knows when it matters. And I guess the main thing is knowing them. And if that's what he does every year, that's what you want him to do every year.
Yeah, well, Walter's either completely like that or he's very explosive. And if he does it at weird times, and he will this winter still do a few explosions, but it wouldn't be necessarily when you think he's going to do it. So yeah, he's a great character, but he's ever so comfortable in his own skin. He wouldn't. Albie was. He was a trier, and I'm not saying Walter doesn't try, because he does in his own way, but he's comfortable. He's a comfortable horse, which is great. It makes, he's got a nice life in that respect.
What about Islot DHI, the Poe winner and the Blenheim winner? Tell us a little bit about him, because obviously he's very much on the upward trajectory. And again, he's not particularly old. I want to say he is 11 this time.
Yeah, so 11 this time. Yeah, so he's still a really young horse, and he's actually come through this winter looking the best he's ever looked. Body-wise, he's just starting to hit maturity, I think. And he's been a kind of lanky, leggy, every time he stops work over a winter, his neck disappears and goes on forever, but there's no muscle to it. And this winter, he's had a bit of a longer break, actually, and he's kept his weight really well, and he's just starting to kind of furnish, I think, which is lovely. Yeah, I mean, very different behaviour-wise sometimes. Would be my most challenging horse I've had to train, but equally is very trainable in a lot of respects. It's just very, very spooky, and I have to hold my hand up and saying, we haven't yet been in the arena, because I just hack for a little bit longer where what he likes doing. He's still got his winter woolies on and he's hacking. And we just we'll keep the arena work to when the sun comes out and it gets a bit warmer, I think.
Do a bit on the hill, it'll be fine.
Yeah, and he's fine once he gets going out and about in the lorry. It's fine. It's just hacking's a bit easier than the schoolwork when he's at this time of year anyway.
It's about what makes them tick, listeners. That's the secret to a good partnership. Compromise every so often as well. I know that the listeners are going to be thinking, what is the plan? So I'm going to ask the question everybody wants to know the answer to, particularly your two big boys. What will be the plan this spring? Is there anything you can share?
Well, I can't share a huge amount because it's not quite set in stone yet, to be honest, what I'm doing. There's plans A, plan B, plan C's, but I'm not sure which order they're running in yet. So they certainly both planning on coming out at the start of the season. They'll probably run at Osby and Lincoln, or Osby or Lincoln, and will more than likely head to Thorsby probably for the 4-star. So kind of that's as far as we've got. But I'm looking forward to getting them out there. That I'm very, very lucky. They're fantastic. Both of them fantastic horses. Isolot might give me a bit of a run around at the start of the season, but I at least I have confidence now that we can get where we want to get by the end of the season. So it's all good.
There you go, listeners. We've got it. We've got something out of her. That's what we've got to look forward to over the next couple of months. But of course, lots to look forward to. Badminton on the horizon. Of course, the Olympic Games this year in Paris as well. Ros, world champion. This is more, I guess, on you than the horses, but we've got you, so we're going to ask you. You're a world champion. You've picked up that accolade, European champion as well. What would it mean to go to an Olympics and to actually add that accolade to your already very impressive CV?
I think that would be massive for me. It really would. Yeah, I grew up, my dad loves sport and stuff. We grew up loving watching the Olympics, and I still do now. I'd get excited watching anything that is like an Olympics where it's multiple sports and everybody's in it for the same reason. So I think it really ticks that box for me and for our family. So it would be hugely exciting, and I think I know, in a way now I know I deserve to be there. I know I'm good enough to be there. Okay, everything has to align. A horse can bruise its foot the day before. can be not quite right, form can't be good enough, and I'm realistic in that sense. It's not going to ruin my life if I don't get there, but it would be a huge project for me, definitely. And I think, I do feel, I don't know if it's mum guilt, but I certainly do feel pulled in many directions quite a lot of the time, and the balance is hard. And I, in some ways, would feel, I'm going to put all into it this year, and if I could come out with that would be, all justified then.
Yeah, I think that sums it up very, very well. Well, look, there'll be so many people behind you over the coming months cheering you on, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of people that can't wait to see you out and about competing at the start of the season as well. I hope that the last couple of months or few weeks, as it probably is now, of the off season, so to speak, treats you well. Thank you for being the first brilliant guest on our Horse for Lifetime series. We're delighted to have Agria on board, and no better way to kickstart it than with you. So thank you very much. And Allstar B, this one is for you.
Thank you.